Greetings, Chummer, and welcome back to another RIT90s recap, this time for episode 13, Family Dinner with the Outlaws. At the start of our episode, Sally gets acquainted with Gawain as Arthur sneaks away to investigate the lab within the Goblin Cave. Gawain helps Sally steal some chocolate mud balls from the top shelf of the pantry before she disappears into the air vents, leaving Gawain alone with Merlin, Mordred, and Percy's unconscious bodies. In the astral plane, Percy catches up to Merlin and Mordred outside of the warehouse door. Percy, marginally annoyed with having a hole burnt in her pocket, opens the warehouse and ushers the pair inside. However, they are initially barred from entry. Merlin then realizes that she can use her ability, Slip, to help guide Mordred's soul into the warehouse. That they realize isn't actually a part of the astral plane, but is its own demi-plane. The trio then begins to wander around and explore the interior of the warehouse. Although Merlin and Mordred are unable to interact with any of the physical objects inside, Percy starts investigating the smaller wooden doors that line the hallway, but unfortunately none of them open and instead glow brightly with a geometric sigil. Sally crawls through the air vents into one of the guest rooms to tell Kay, a small pixie-sized elf shaman girl, about their new guests and the large orc with teeth big enough for someone to swing on them. Intrigued by the idea of new guests, Kay wanders into the living room and launches herself onto Gawain's back, hoping to test out the swing teeth. Gawain cries out in shock, interrupting Arthur's train of thought while he was researching the lab for supplies. Arthur finds Kay swinging from Gawain's back before they're able to calm them down and make some proper introductions. Kay then introduces Arthur and Gawain to her spirit friends. Back in the warehouse, Mordred accidentally slips and falls through one of the doors, even though Percy is unable to open them. He pokes his head through and sees a large open field underneath a starry night sky. Before he leaves, Mordred also hears a deafening roar and sees an enormous, dark, leathery creature fly overhead. Panicked, he phases back into the main hallway. Percy, vexed by her inability to open the doors, decides to see if she can bring Mordred's sword back with her into the material plane. In doing so, she accidentally locks Merlin and Mordred inside the warehouse by themselves. Upon returning to the material plane, Percy appears with Mordred's sword and is introduced to Kay. The group decides that it might be best for them to continue their quest to retrieve Mordred from the astral plane from Kay's room. They haul Merlin and Mordred's bodies to the guest room where they meet Winry, Kay's wyvern. Merlin tries to coach Mordred on how to exit the astral plane and achieves less than stellar results. She then remembers that she was forced to leave Oberon behind in the van and decides to try and summon him to the warehouse, much to Mordred's chagrin. Instead of summoning Oberon, Merlin is assaulted with a flood of visions. Oberon standing over a purple demon creature, the burning eyes of a black dragon, a bearded knight wearing a cape of juniper and drafting the first line for the elven poem, and a castle. Upon receiving the last vision, she is met with a sandy-haired boy who stares at Mordred and Merlin in utter confusion. He introduces himself as Brennan, the Fisher King's son. After talking to Brennan for a bit, Merlin decides to try and send him back using the magical banishment skill. After seeing this work, Merlin realizes that this might be the way to get Mordred back into the material plane. Mordred tells her that it might not be the best idea, but she goes ahead and casts the spell anyway, opening a portal that swallows him up. Meanwhile, in Meat Space, Percy relays their current predicament in the warehouse to the rest of the party. Arthur decides that this might be a good opportunity to test out some of their budding special abilities, thinking that if Drift and Esper got him trapped in the astral plane, that maybe they could also help get him out. Arthur notes that Percy can bring physical objects to and from the astral plane, so maybe she can help Arthur astrally project. However, that plan goes horribly wrong when Percy only brings Arthur's body with her, leaving his soul behind before it eventually transports itself into the astral plane. Percy heads back into the warehouse with Arthur's body and realizes that Merlin sent Mordred away, but he didn't wake up in the material plane. Kay follows the duo into the astral plane and rendezvous with Arthur in his astral form. Merlin and Percy exit the warehouse and realize just how much trouble they've gotten themselves into, as Mordred is missing and Arthur is now trapped in the astral plane. Having his soul banished from the warehouse, Mordred finds himself careening through darkness and briars until his vision goes black and he slams into a wall. He wakes up in a small wooden tavern, a goblin woman staring down at him as his form is draped over her bar. She helps him stand up, and Mordred realizes that he's no longer in the warehouse, or even in Seattle for that matter. The goblin woman tries to calm him down. He sits down at the bar to order food, but realizes he can't read the menu since it's in a completely foreign language. He looks at his hands to see that they are completely made out of wood. Mordred, on the verge of panic, asks the goblin woman for a mirror, and she brings him a large dinner platter. Mordred sees his reflection is not his own and immediately stands up to leave the tavern. Tune in next episode to find out what happens next. And always remember, the birds work for the bourgeoisie.